Hello, I am Brad. Welcome to the Minuteman Theory podcast. I already said I'm Brad, but I'm Brad, and I'm joined by,
I'm Nick.
yeah. And today we're going to be talking about some current events and just some things that we're doing with our lives, and maybe addressing some comments that we got on the last podcast we did. Let's start with that, Nick. What were some of the comments that you wanted to talk about? Last time we talked about like homesteading and the duty of humanity, by the way.
Yeah, and I had commented a little bit with this individual, I guess. Brow Hat 6935 brought up they lived kind of an isolated life, and when we were talking about how important community was, whether they need to be part of a community, I brought up that I had heard of situations in which there were people, hermits or like mountain men, that something, who did live alone and seemed relatively fulfilled. And I thought of, I can't remember his name, the guy that did Alone in the Wilderness. He seemed relatively satisfied with his life. But Brow Hat suggested, like, no, you really do need other people. And speaking from experiences, says he kind of lived outside the community. And that's kind of my suspicion. I kind of couch that as there could be, just because I've never experienced that and I don't have any data or whatever. But it seems to me that being like social creatures, community is probably pretty essential. Again, I'm saying probably because I don't know for sure, but I would lean more on the side of yes, community is essential over, well, maybe for some people it's fine, sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, I was just gonna say it. Like, I tend to agree. I think we're social creatures. We need some sort of community, and there probably are some oddballs out there that can be fine isolated. But I wonder
So what
too.
does fine mean?
Exactly. I wonder too, like those people who are fine being isolated, if they have some sort of mental something that
Right.
that maybe they're not actually fine, but to them it seems fine, but they are missing part of something. They just don't realize it.
Yeah, or even like somebody that they feel like they're fine, but that's only because they're by themselves and don't have to confront the things that a community would force them to confront. Like maybe when they're around people, they're kind of a jerk and they're self-centered and stuff, which could be fixed if they were in a community and actually engaged, or at least helped to make them see that and be better, where they don't have to deal with those sorts of things if they're all by themselves.
Yeah, well, I actually watched a very interesting video essay the other night, and this guy was talking about why do people fantasize about living in a post-apocalyptic environment, and I think he nailed it. Like, it was something I had never really thought about before, but I think that he nailed it. He basically was saying that the reason people fantasize about living in that post-apocalyptic environment, even though they understand that it would be hard and it would be a fight for your life all the time, and that, dealing with an apocalyptic situation to end up in a post-apocalyptic environment would be, your likelihood of surviving would be slim and all that kind of stuff. But he was saying that he feels as though people fantasize about living that sort of life because all of the weight of society is gone. You basically get to wake up and, there are things you still have to do. You have to go hunting. You have to go find water, supplies, and all that sort of thing. But there's no more job you hate. There's no more boss you hate. There's no more living around people that you don't get along with. And
sort of
it
like grass is
also,
greener, because it would get rid of all of the
right,
like challenges of modern society to a degree, replace them with other challenges that are arguably way worse, but you'd get rid of all the things you are currently stressed and worried about.
right. Well, and he also used the example of like The Walking Dead. He was also saying that not only would all that societal pressure and stuff be gone, but there would be no real rules or guidelines that you would live by except for the ones that you made for yourself. So more things would be permissible. And he used the example of Walking Dead, where he's like, if they walk into this place and, fight raiders or whatever and kill all these people to get these supplies, we would say that that is wrong in a civilized society, but it's not necessarily in a post-apocalyptic environment. And so in a way, it's more freeing, but it's also definitely it is a grass is greener, like you said. Oh,
Yeah.
Well, I guess my lights aren't going to last. I might have to kind of sit here in the dark. My lights, before we started recording, my lights started blinking, and I think that they're on their way out. So,
well, that's fine. It's your turn. If you remember last time, my light went out in the middle. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, yep. Okay. I think they're not. I need to unplug them before they overheat. Hold on. Oh. Okay. I mean, you can still kind of see me. I still have a light over here.
I think that I've had this thought last few years. I wonder if part of that kind of fantasizing about catastrophe could also be related to, and I think there's some societal stuff that could be at least partially explained with this. But I think it was Dostoevsky that said, if you basically take away all a person's problems, give them everything they need, so all they have to do is eat cakes and busy themselves with the expansion of the species, they would intentionally like break something, one, just to prove that they're not a piano key, but also like so that something interesting would happen. And also, so I wonder if there's also a component of like modern society is so comparatively easy that the dream of a hard life is trying to fulfill some deep need that we have that's not being fulfilled by the relative ease of at least modern Western existence.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we look up to, even though we live relatively easy lives compared to the rest of history, we still look up to the people who deal with great hardship to get where they are. Or you look at, great innovators who have, sacrificed so much to further humanity, or they've dedicated their life to science or to their faith or to whatever to further that. It's normal to look up to that sort of person because they are living the strenuous life on purpose, even though they don't have to. They could just live a simple life like the majority of people and just kind of coast by. And I wonder too if like what you said, if that's why sometimes we get riots, because young people lack purpose because their lives are too easy. They have nothing to fight for, really. And so then they start fighting for things that really are inappropriate to fight for. And they fight in ways that are inappropriate, like by rioting.
Yeah, just to do something that is like risky and that you think is this like grand adventure, because most modern people don't see their lives as a grand adventure, which I think it still is. It's just a lot easier not to look at it that way, because it's a lot easier. And I wonder if that's part of it too. It's a lot easier to just exist because you don't have to fight for your existence, generally speaking, in like the Western world. Whereas part of that fantasizing about the kind of dystopian post-apocalyptic future could also be like, you couldn't choose to not do the hard things. So you picture yourself doing all these hard things because you'd have to. You're like, oh, if it was like that, I would do that. And you can use that to ignore the fact that you're not choosing to do that now, because you don't have to. It's a choice, which also almost makes it harder to do those things because, in or even like 200 years ago, if you lived like in a rural place, or even now in rural places in parts of the world, if you don't do the hard thing, then you die. Mm-hmm. Whereas that's not really the case in the Western world days. I wonder if there's a part of, again, just who we are as creatures or beings, that we get fulfillment out of doing the hard thing. We know that at a deep level, but it's hard. And so reasonably people choose not to do it, even though they fantasize about, well, what if I was a person that could? That's thinking about the people that do it. Or if I was put in a situation where I had to, I totally would. which even then you'd probably die anyways. Like,
Yeah, well, now I wonder if that's just because, back before we had all the technology and scientific advancements and stuff we have now, those people who didn't do it, they did die. And
yeah,
so that's why, the human population wasn't in the billions, a few hundred years ago. It was, or well, not in the multiple billions. A few hundred years ago is probably like a billion or something. And then, yeah, because people would die. Do you know about Mouse Utopia?
yeah. Well, tell me the specific what you're referring to. I can think of a couple
So
experiments.
Mouse Utopia was this experiment, and I don't remember the scientist that was doing it. But he created this environment for these mice where they had all the food and water that they wanted. They had food and water on demand. They weren't on a schedule or anything. It was they could eat as much as they wanted, drink as much as they wanted, and they could have as much sex as they wanted. They basically, and they were protected. They were in an enclosure, and they had plenty of room to roam around and stuff. No predators, anything, and he just kind of let them go at it. And he found that, at a certain point, the mice just got really neurotic, and they would start to kind of isolate themselves. They would stop having sex. Sometimes they would just eat and eat and eat and be really gluttonous, and just all these random, it just fell apart. You would think with all that security and all the food and water that they needed, and they could have as much sex as they wanted and reproduce as many times as they wanted with no harm of predators or anything, that they would just explode. But I guess it started out kind of exploding and then leveled off, and all the mice just got really lazy and just stopped caring, or so it seemed. And not mice aren't the same as humans, but I wonder if that is something similar to what's happening with humans in our current cushy age.
Yeah, well, there was another experiment that I don't remember if it was mice or rats, but they took and they basically gave the mice a button to push, and when they pushed the button, they got cocaine. And when they were in just like cages, just like these sterile cage with nothing to do, they would just do cocaine all day. But if you put them in an enclosure that mimicked their natural environment, they didn't do cocaine.
Huh.
So it's like when they had the kind of environment and challenges and stuff that they were kind of built to deal with, life itself was fulfilling enough they didn't need this drug. So again, also like with the opiate crisis and that sort of thing that we're going through, I wonder if there's a component of that that is people's lives aren't hard enough for the life itself to be fulfilling. And again, this isn't me saying people's lives are universally easy or that it's not possible to have a challenging life, but you have to choose the challenge a lot more now because it's not thrust upon you the way it used to be. Because generally speaking, we aren't in our quote unquote natural environment anymore. We go from climate controlled box to climate controlled box, and we never have to do anything significantly uncomfortable. You have a job you have to do that you don't like, and if you don't do it, then you do get shoved out into the street, and then things are really bad. But for most people, you don't really have to worry about food or water that much. There are people that are food insecure, but people generally don't starve in the West unless something serious is going on with them. So you're no longer life itself isn't the thing you're wrestling with. And so you're trying to find these other things to do or to unplug completely from this unfulfilling world. And that's where the drugs come in.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, I wonder if that plays into just general vices, whatever, the drugs and alcohol and even other things like pornography and video games and just stuff that allows you to escape, but used in a way that that is excessive.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's one of those like your life should be the adventure of your lifetime. So like it should be this adventure that you're on as you're growing as you're taking on the world. But again, more and more you have to choose to do that. It's the do hard things mentality. Our current societal structure doesn't force you to do the hard things the same way that the natural state did.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. Well, but speaking of hard things, we've decided to take on this 75 hard challenge, but modified a bit because at least my life does not currently allow for enough time to complete all of the challenges. For those who don't know, 75 hard is a challenge created by a fitness guy, and I don't remember his name. I am terribly sorry. And the whole idea was to harden your mind and to help get you into positive routines. And so the rules are for 75 days straight, no alcohol. You have to drink a gallon of water. You have to read 10 pages of a nonfiction book. You have to do 2 45-minute workouts, or just, stretches of uninterrupted physical activity for 2 45-minute sessions per day. You have to weigh yourself every day, and you have to take a progress picture every day. I think that's it.
I think that's it.
I said a gallon of water, right? You drink a gallon of water every day. Yeah. So, and if you miss any single one of those on any of the days, like if you don't finish your gallon of water one day, you have to start the 75 days over. Now, I'm calling it 75 medium because I'm only doing 1 45-minute workout a day because I just don't have the time to fit in 2 plus everything else. And then my wife is also joining us, and one of her modifications is I don't think she's going to stick to the nonfiction rule for the reading. She's just going to read at least 10 pages of a book every day. For me, that's easy because I almost exclusively read nonfiction. So
yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah. So that one's easy for me. But yeah, I think that's the only modification I'm doing is the only 1 45-minute workout a day. The other rule is you have to stick to some sort of diet, and that's very nebulous. You can choose whatever you want, and so I'm just going to count calories and ensure that I'm in a slight calorie deficit. So, what's your modifications?
You also miss for a full 75 hour. I don't think you said this. One of the workouts has to be outside.
Oh yeah. One of the workouts has to be outside. It's about to get dangerously cold here, so I'm going to try and do all my workouts outside, but if it is like negative 30 degrees, I am not going to spend 45 minutes outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so my modification is similar because, again, work and children and whatnot. So I'm not holding myself to the 2 45 minutes a day, and I'm counting if I'm outside of the house and I'm consistently active, then if I don't have time to fit something else on the day, then I'll count that. So like, for example, today I was working, I was cooking dinner, I did a whole bunch of shopping. So like I spent like 2 hours at various stores today, which was obnoxious, but I was on my feet walking around. So I probably got, couple 3 miles of walking done today, and so I'm counting that as my activity even though I was shopping. But like yesterday I went out and I was chopping and cutting wood for 45 minutes, and that was my workout for yesterday. So so long as I'm active,
that definitely counts.
Counting that as a workout.
Chopping wood definitely counts.
Yeah,
that's a workout.
Well, and I got a bunch of free firewood from my boss, but the people that cut it up for him, he told them 18 inches, and they didn't do 18 inches. So there are several that are way too long. And I don't have a chainsaw, so I just have a little crosscut saw that I'm cutting them down with too. So,
well, that's extra workout. You don't have a chainsaw. Well,
I don't. I'm going
yeah.
to get one.
Okay. Well, man, this is like the land of chainsaws. I've had, I mean, I have two saws that I keep, but I've had like 5 different chainsaws since I moved here, just because you find them at yard sales for like $10. Like, no, seriously, like you'll find an old, I've bought several old Home Light chainsaws for, the cheapest one was $3. I spent $3 on a chainsaw. Most expensive one that I bought was like $20. And the $20 one ran. The other ones, like the $3 one, it wasn't running. But literally all it needed was I took the carburetor off and cleaned it real quick and then put fresh fuel in it, and then it ran. So, and that's been the story with pretty much every saw that I've bought is, the person's like, it doesn't run, $10. And you just, just clean it and put fresh fuel in it, and then they work. So,
well, that's
just
like
people
you have a basic understanding of how things work. And we had we bought an oven this before we moved, because our old oven went out, and the lady had it for like $200 less than what it was really worth. But she was like, yeah, it's got a 4-prong plug and we have a 3-prong outlet, and I'm not, I don't want to hire an electrician to fix that for me. I'm like, okay. And because I also had the wrong outlet, so I just swapped out the plug. It took me 3 minutes. Like,
yeah, I think it's weird that people don't know that you can just go to Home Depot and for like $15 or $20, you just get a different cord and you just put.
Well, the wild thing was
just
I already had a spare cord on hand, so I didn't even have to go and buy one. I just grabbed it, swapped it out. I'm like, all right, we're good.
Yeah, there you go. Huh. It's interesting that little things that that people don't know, or like what's interesting to me too is when something gets dirty, they won't clean it. They'll just say, it's no good anymore, and throw it out. Or like, I'm not going to name any names because he may very well watch this, but somebody one day brought me a 22 handgun, like a 22 autoloader, and he said, well, it worked great when I first got it, but now it doesn't want to cycle. Can you look at it and tell me what's wrong with it? And I was like, well, I can look at it and see. I looked at it. That thing was so dirty, like you could barely work the slide by hand. And I was like, I think this is just dirty. When was the last time you cleaned this? And he's like, oh, I've never cleaned it. So I got out the gun cleaning kit. You spent like 10 minutes, took it apart, cleaned it really well. And then it was all nice and smooth and stuff. And I was like, here, go take it out. He took it out and was like, oh, it works great again. Oh, thank you. And it's like, yeah, you need to just clean it, like keep it lubricated, maintain it. Or, people that drive the wheels off their cars and they never, worry about changing fluids or doing any of the maintenance things, and then they wonder why, I hate this type of car because I bought it brand new and it only lasted me 50,000 miles and then it broke down and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, it's because you didn't do any of the maintenance things you were supposed to.
Well, it's even like the simplest situation I ever had. A friend and his wife came over, and they had stayed the night. We made breakfast the next day, but made pancakes, but I didn't have any syrup. I'm like, oh, I got these frozen blueberries. So I just threw the frozen blueberries with some sugar and water in a pan, and I made a little blueberry syrup. And she was astounded. She's like, how do you do that? I'm like, it's the simplest thing. Syrup is just water, sugar, and if you want flavoring. Like,
yeah. Well, that was kind of, I'm going to put my wife on blast here a little bit. That happened, I don't know, a couple of years ago. I made mac and cheese. We didn't have any like boxed mac and cheese. And I was like, I want some mac and cheese. I'll make us some mac and cheese. And she's like, we don't have any mac and cheese. I was like, no, I'll just make some. And so like to make a cheese sauce, it's really easy. You just make a roux, which is literally butter and flour. And you melt the butter in a pan. You mix in some flour till it gets kind of thick, and then you add cheese, and then you add whatever, seasonings you want until it's nice and thick, and then you put that on noodles. That's mac and cheese. That's all it is. And she was like, this is the best mac and cheese I've ever had. How did you make this? We didn't even have any mac and cheese. And I was like, let me show you. And now she makes it that way all the time. She's like, I had no idea. yeah, simple things like that. That I part of it is like people don't know, but sometimes people don't even think to look it up. I mean, we have the internet. You could just Google how to make mac and cheese from scratch, and
And it's like the vast majority of things, especially food related, but I think in general, there's a large percentage of things you can do yourself if you just research and figure out how to do it. And particularly with food, if you can't do it yourself, maybe you shouldn't be eating it.
well, yeah, or maybe you should just practice.
No, I'm saying like if there's something like a Monster energy drink with all these chemicals that you can't do on your own, maybe you shouldn't be consuming that.
Sure. Well, I mean, you could make an alternative that is probably healthier. I mean, like if you wanted a Red Bull or a Monster, I'm pretty sure it's some sort of citrus base. You could just make something up. I made when you were in Germany, did you ever have Club Mate?
I don't think so.
Oh, it's kind of a niche like energy drink made with yerba mate, which is a tea, which is weird because it's a German drink made with a South American tea. And I don't know where that all lines up, but anyway, it's basically like a tea soda. And I found a recipe online and made my own, and it's so good. Yeah. It's kind of an acquired taste, but we imported, when I had the computer store in Washington, we imported some because I really wanted to try it because it was kind of a computer hacker thing, and it was really good. And since then I haven't had any, and I looked into importing some more, but it would be very expensive to get it here. So I just made my own, and it tasted pretty much the same, and it was good. But it was just like, I don't know, 10 minutes of research. I figured out how to make it myself.
I think there's a lot of places in life that you can do that. There are modern conveniences, like you don't think it's like necessary that you go out and do it, but I think it's fun, and it's a nice thing to like really understand how the things are made. So like I brew beer, and so you have your first of all, malting barley I really want to try at some point, but that's a bit more involved process. But then you have your base grain, and then you have all these like roasted grains and stuff to give the beer like the color and flavor. I'm like, well, how would I make like a roasted grain? You literally just take the base malt and then you cook it in the oven for a while until it gets the color and stuff that you want. I'm like, oh, I could totally do that. Just get a big old bag of base grain and then look at the recipe and then just spend a couple days roasting grains until I have what I need.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. Like home brewing is pretty simple. You do need some equipment to do it right, but like we had all those plums. I made plum wine, and literally all it was plums, water, and yeast. That's all I used, and it came out awesome.
If you have something that's sweet, you can turn it into a wine.
Yeah. Or now I'm trying to remember. Maybe I did add a little bit of sugar.
But I've heard that a lot of times unless it's like the wine grapes, to make it a wine, you do have to add sugar just because the sugar concentration isn't high enough in the fruit itself to get it up to that kind of wine concentration.
Yeah.
But it's like I made hard cider the other day by just buying some cider from the store and then adding yeast and waiting a little bit, and it turned out excellent. Like,
yeah, that was the first thing I ever brewed was hard cider.
I went fancy this time. I instead of getting the apple juice, I spent an extra 50 cents a gallon for the apple cider.
Okay, now I had a roommate that worked at a bottling plant, and he told me that with very few exceptions, apple juice and apple cider are identical except the labels are different. He said, but it's the same juice put in the same bottles with a different label. And most of the time, like the store brand and the name brand are the same exact juice. He said, except there are some exceptions. So like you'll buy like the unfiltered cider. He said that is different.
Yeah. And this one was unfiltered.
Okay. Yeah. So.
Yeah, but even just the juice from concentrate from the store, like the name brand apple juice, just throw in some yeast, it becomes a decent cider.
Yeah.
Because that's all cider is fermented apple juice.
Well, I will say picking the yeast does make a difference. Like just
Yes.
throwing in baker's yeast isn't the best.
No.
If you used baker's yeast to ferment some juice and then like filtered it really well and then let it settle out really well, it might be okay. But
It
I
might be okay.
because I remember. Do you remember when I made homemade root beer and homemade
Oh, yeah.
ginger ale? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first time I tried to make ginger ale, this was like in high school. And for those who don't know, like ginger ale, traditional or like homemade ginger ale, you actually brew it, and it comes out to be like 0.2% alcohol or something. So not really alcoholic, but it
Yeah,
carbonates
it
it.
just ferments enough to get the carbon dioxide in there.
Yeah, and makes it a little, a little funky. But the
When
first
you use
time I
bread
tried,
yeast.
yeah, well, the first time I tried, I used baker's yeast, and it was nasty. And then I actually went to the store and bought like champagne yeast, and then it actually was good. So
Yeah.
there's yeast makes a difference for sure.
Well, that's one of the big things. Like, you can get all into the weeds on all the different kinds of yeast for the different kinds of beers and the different flavors and how much they ferment and all that sort of thing. So, like, that is one thing that you can't just grab any old yeast and have the exact same result. Like, it does make a big difference.
Yeah, but if you buy brewer's yeast, like if you brewed beer with champagne yeast, which I have done before, it does turn out okay.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't taste bad.
Yeah.
You might not get the exact results you're looking for, but it won't taste. I don't know. The baker's yeast just made it taste not good.
Well, I think part of it too is like, one, the baker's yeast isn't bred for fermenting like the flavors of beer and stuff, but also, from my understanding, like baker's yeast is bred primarily to eat starches because it goes
Yeah.
into flour, whereas brewer's yeast primarily eats sugars. So if you
Mhm.
throw baker's yeast in there with a whole bunch of sugars, it might not like it all that much. It could throw some off flavors and not do a great job and that sort of thing. I mean, it would produce alcohol, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, we got off track a little bit, but
we did.
what are you hoping to gain in your life from trying this challenge?
Um, so for one, I several years ago I started eating carnivore and I lost like 100 pounds. And then just had a baby a few months ago and got off of that. And so one, I had plateaued a little bit before. And then I'd gotten off of it. So I'm hoping to get back onto a consistent, healthy diet. We're starting just kind of whole food, though I'm planning to try and shift back more towards carnivore.
Mhm.
Um,
Whole food
and
with heavy protein and fat.
yes.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, and then, so yeah, I want to get the last like 20 pounds to get below 200 pounds.
Mm.
Because I'm still lighter than I can ever remember being, except for like when I was a kid or whatnot. Um, but I've always had that 200 pounds where I'm like, yeah, I can reassess like if I need to lose any more, but that's going to be like, yes, I succeeded in getting a healthy weight sort of thing.
Wait,
So
so how much do you weigh right now?
it's like 215 last time I checked.
Oh, right on. Okay, I weighed myself this morning and I was 212.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're very close to the same weight. My goal is also to get below 200. I think between like 190 and 200 would be pretty good.
Yeah. The lowest I got when I was really tracking consistent stuff was like 211.
Mm.
But I never quite dipped down into like the single digits above 200 or anything like that. Um, so I think that's part of it. But then also just too, like, again, routines and stuff getting thrown off with having a new baby, just getting back on track in terms of uh, re rebuilding those good habits and um, also kind of prepping myself for when we buy a house and I have to kind of work the land a little bit and stuff. I don't want to be dead after 10 minutes of hoeing or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Good, good. I'm
What about you? What are you trying to get out of it?
just kind of get back into a routine and better habits. I feel like my life has just been pretty chaotic recently. I don't have an excuse like you with a newborn, but just work has been all over the place and just all sorts of things too. But just trying to get back into a routine, get back into working out and eating healthier too. So
Well, I think in general that can be one of the positive benefits of having positive habits, of whether it's reading or working out or meditation or like just doing something to consistently to take care of yourself. Is it can, even when things are chaotic, like that can be a consistent, solid thing that you can always go back to and like, hey, I'm grounded here. I'm okay. This is where I'm at. And then I think that helps you launch out into whatever the chaos of the world is. You're like, nope, I can do this because I'm here.
Yeah, and when I think back on my life so far, all the times where I've felt really good and felt like I can take on whatever's coming at me, regardless of what it is, have been the times where I've had that routine where I'm consistently working out and, eating healthy and being active and all that sort of thing. But it's one of those weird things too, where when I get kind of sedentary, I know that going back to that will help me feel better and help me be in a better mental state and a better physical state and all that sort of stuff. But and I know that once I get into the routine of doing it, it'll feel good, but it is so hard to get back going, even though I know all those things are going to be better for me and that I'm going to feel much better doing it that way. It's just hard to get started, I guess,
Because it's not just building the good habits, which are uncomfortable at first. Like it's not fun at first, but you're also breaking all of the bad habits that are way easier. So like it is a big uphill battle, because you not only do you have to say no to the thing that gives you the immediate comfort and say yes to the thing that gives you the immediate discomfort, you have to do that every single day.
Yep.
But also that's the story of how you live a fulfilled life, is you do the thing that you don't want to do, but that's better for you, and you do it every day.
So speaking of doing hard things, recently there was a world first on Mount Everest, and you didn't hear about this?
I didn't hear about this.
Okay, so Red Bull sponsored an athlete to summit Mount Everest and then ski from the summit down to base camp.
Oof. I assume they did it?
Yeah, he did it. But man, you watch the video and it's like, because once you get above like I think it's like 8,000 meters or whatever, they call that the death zone, where the air is so thin that it can only like support human life for, like, they say that you can only survive like 15 to 20 hours or something in that zone without supplemental oxygen.
Yeah, because hikers, when they summit, they take oxygen with them, right?
Not always. So some of the hardcore ones do it without oxygen.
So then they have to really huff it to get up to the top and back down out of that danger zone.
Yeah. So, and I don't know for sure. I want to say Mount Everest is like 8,700 meters or 8,500 meters or something like that. So, like, I don't think that there are any of the camps that are in that zone. I think it's kind of just like the last little stretch. I could be wrong. But anyway, this guy did it without oxygen. And so he made it all the way to the top and then strapped his skis on. And like skiing and snowboarding, it's quite a workout, and it gets, you're breathing a lot and all that sort of stuff. And when the air is that thin, like you watch the first part of the video where he's going down from the summit, and he'll ski like 20 feet and then stop, and he's like out of breath, huffing and puffing, and he'll wait there for a little bit, and then it'll go like another 20 feet and same kind of thing, huffing and puffing, and just and he makes it all the way down safely. But yeah, world's first person to
Wow.
ski down from the summit down to base camp. So I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. You you have to choose the hard thing every step you take if you're doing something like that. Like,
Well, and you gotta. I was thinking about it. Like, on one hand, like, okay, so the ascent is just as difficult as any other hiker. Well, any other hiker who's doing it without oxygen, that is. The descent, at first I was thinking like, oh, well, you know what? The descent would be easier because you can move a whole lot faster with skis. But then watching the video, I realized that that's probably not true, because I would bet that you're using more energy to ski. Not only that, but I think it would be easier to make a mistake and fall and get seriously hurt or die.
well, because there's no ski slopes down off of Everest, so it's just I'm assuming he just went through like the fresh powder and found his own way down, or did he go on the hiking parts?
He went on kind of he went around like where the hiking parts were, and it sounded like, because he had a spotter that was flying a drone kind of helping direct him, and it sounded like they kind of had a plan or a path laid out for him. Like
Okay.
they had pre-scouted the area and said, okay, you're going to come down here and you're going to go this way and all that. Because there's a part down near the base camp where there's like an ice shelf and a glacier. And so there's a lot of, places where it would be really easy to just fall in a hole. Especially if you're skiing and, it comes up on you fast. So I think they had kind of a route planned out, but there was a part in the video too where the drone operator was like, oh, you need to go, more to the left or whatever, because something had shifted since they had done their route planning. But it's not a ski slope. It's not groomed or anything. It's probably, I don't know. Would that be like a pentuple diamond, black diamond or something? I don't know. But I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. I've not thought about summiting Everest, but I've thought about, not that I could do this anymore with where my life is, but like doing the Appalachian Trail or something, like a long haul hike where it's just you and your feet and you're trying to get somewhere, but it's a really long ways away and you just have to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you could get some of the same effects just by doing like a weekend backpacking trip. I mean, a couple years ago, Ian and I had that kind of experience on just a weekend backpacking trip. Took us 15 hours to get to where we were going when it should have only taken us like 7. So that was one of those where we got lost and just had to keep going,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a couple points in that trip where I was like, we're in over our heads. but we made it out. So those
are always the best stories. They suck when you're in the middle of it, but then looking back on it, like the closest I think I've ever came to death was in college in Indiana. I convinced my friends to go camping with me. And there was this wilderness area because I didn't like the manicured campsites and that sort of thing. Like, I want to go and actually get into the woods. And in Indiana, that's not easy to do. But there's this wilderness area. So this entire area is not really maintained at all. There are a couple trails and there are a couple like campsites that are just a fire pit. Like there's no running water or anything. But I'm like, no, I want to go in because the wilderness area, you could camp with some restrictions wherever you want. You don't have to be on the trail or whatever. So I'm like, I want to go and camp right down by the lake. There's not a trail that goes right down by the lake. So I looked at the map like, all right, we'll get off the trail. We'll hike down here. So I think it was like 3 or 4 miles. So it wasn't like that far, but it was pretty rugged. And we didn't have backpacking equipment. So we just had tent camping stuff.
Oh no.
So we're like, okay, we got there. Like, all right, we'll bring our tent down. And I remember what all we had. We had a few things. We're like, then we'll come back and get the rest of our stuff from the car. Well, by the time we got down there, we did not have time to get back to the car before it got dark. So when I had planned this trip, I looked at the weather. I'm like, oh, it's supposed to be like high 30s, low 40s. That's above freezing. We'll be fine. And so we pitched the tent and there were four of us. One of us was smart enough that he brought his sleeping bag. The other three of us had to spend that night sharing like a Walmart throw blanket.
Uh-huh.
And like all night long, we were shivering and shattering, and we were probably very close to hypothermia. And then it was like a week later after we finally got back, because we were supposed to stay all weekend. And after that night, we're like, we can't. So we didn't even bring water down with us.
Oh no! What was your plan for water?
We had water in the car, but we had a pot with us. But it was so wet, and we weren't good at making fires. We couldn't get the water boiling. We also didn't bring food with us because I had a fishing pole. I'm like, we'll just catch our food, and we didn't catch anything. So we decided that we can't stay with this. We're going to leave, and we left. And like a week later, the friend that had a sleeping bag, he was like, "Yeah, I actually kind of got warm and had to unzip my sleeping bag." While the rest of us were laying there freezing.
Oh man, I've
actually make good choices when you do hard things.
Yeah, and prepare. Maybe train and practice before you actually go into the bushes without any equipment.
We went back to the exact same place like 2 or 3 years later with hammocks and backpacking stuff, and it was perfectly fine. I had a water filter. I brought food.
Yeah, there was a time my buddy Lance and I we went to Ice Lake in the Eagle Cap Wilderness, and we had been backpacking several times before then. And when I say several times, I mean a handful, but always in the middle of summer, always to places we had been before, and so we thought we were experienced. However, Ice Lake is just below the peak of the tallest mountain in that mountain range, and we went in October. No, the next time we went was in October. No, this time was in the dead of summer. It was like July or something. Anyway, we went all the way up there, and it was a long hike. It was like 10 miles from the trailhead to the lake, and the last mile is like straight up. And we got to the lake, and we set up our hammocks, and we were like, this is great. Let's take a nap. We got there like mid-afternoon. So we both took a nap in our hammocks and woke up to the wind blowing really hard. And we're like, that wind's kind of cold. And then all of a sudden these clouds blow over the mountain and it starts dumping rain. And then we realized, we never planned for rain or cold because it's the middle of summer. And we've never been this close to the tops of the mountains before. And so we just got soaked, and all of our equipment got soaked. And we didn't have any sort of windbreakers or ponchos, didn't have rain flies for our hammocks. And so we just decided, well, we're soaked all the way through. We just might as well walk back to the car and go home. So that's what we did. And what was funny is once we got back down that like really steep part that was only a mile, the weather was a lot nicer down there. And in hindsight, we probably should have like found a spot down there and set up camp and like started a fire and dried our stuff out. But we kept hiking. We went all the way back to the car. We got to the car at like midnight. And then from the trailhead back to the house was another like 2-hour drive. And so we didn't get home until like 2 a.m. and we were both exhausted because we had both just hiked 20 miles. And it was kind of funny too, because I remember it got so dark, we had to turn our flashlights on and hike with our flashlights, and there were field mice jumping across the trail in front of us. And yeah, we finally got to the car, and as soon as I started driving, Lance was out. He's just out and slept the whole way. I stopped in La Grande to get fuel, and I bought a couple Mountain Dews to try and help keep myself awake. I made it all the way home. But I probably shouldn't have driven. I was way too tired. Probably should have stayed. And then I got hypothermic one time. Did I tell you about the time I got hypothermic on a motorcycle ride?
I don't think so.
Oh, man. That might be the closest I've ever been to death. yeah, me and some buddies, we were doing a motorcycle ride, and we used to do this yearly trip. We called the Troy trip because we'd go to Troy, Oregon, and we'd start in Walla Walla, Washington, and ride all the way through the mountains. There was like maybe a stretch of 5 miles of highway that we would ride, but the rest was all through the mountains on, back roads and trails and stuff to get to Troy, Oregon. And then we'd spend a couple days there hanging out, swimming and fishing and drinking beer and whatever. And then this particular time, instead of going back the way we came, we decided to go out the other way, which kicks you out by Dayton, Washington, like on the other side of Dayton.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would ride the highway back to Walla Walla. And you go over this mountain called Mount Misery, and is very aptly named because we started going up Mount Misery, and this was in the middle of summer. Again, it was like June or July, and it started raining. And at first I was kind of like, it's kind of annoying, but not that big a deal. Then it started snowing. Then it started getting really cold. And I did not have any waterproof gear, and I did not have any cold weather gear. Most of the guys I was riding with did, though. They at least had waterproof gear. Mm-hmm. So what happened is I got soaked through, and then I'm also riding, and so the wind's blowing through me. It's getting me really cold, and we had to keep pulling over, and I'd like warm my hands on my exhaust to try and still be able to use my fingers. We got to the top of the mountain, and it's like snowing, and I've got pictures. I'll have to find them. And there was a snowmobile warming cabin at the top of the mountain, and somebody had already lit the stove. And so we pulled in there, and I remember I was so cold that like it was starting to get kind of hard to handle my motorcycle. And not because like my motorcycle was slipping and sliding in the snow or whatever. It was because I was like losing focus, and I couldn't like stay focused. And then we pulled up to the warming cabin, and I remember it was really, really hard for me to just turn my key off on my motorcycle like this. Like my fingers and I wasn't able to use my clutch very well. It was just my hands were starting not to work very well. And yeah, we got in there, and somebody had started the fire before we got there, but nobody was there. And so I stripped off all my clothes down to my underwear, hung up all my clothes, and I stood there next to the fire and started warming up. And after a few minutes, I like started shivering uncontrollably, and then shivered for 10 minutes or whatever, and then warmed up enough that I stopped shivering. Later, I found out that like when you're past the point of shivering, that's like stage 2 hypothermia or something like that. And then when you start to warm up, you go back to the previous stage and start shivering again. So
yeah, you were probably in stage 2 hypothermia.
Probably. But then we stayed there for a couple hours. I warmed up, all my clothes dried off. The other guys did the same thing. They stripped off and got their clothes dry. And then we were off the other side of the mountain in no time, and I was just fine going back out. And again, by the time we got down to the bottom of the mountain, it was sunny and warm, and it wasn't any problem. But yeah, that might have been the closest time I've ever been to death. I'm sure there's been times where I've been in situations where, I could have got in an accident or something. That would have been
like your body actually being close to shutting down.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a very interesting experience, but I don't recommend it. So this is kind of random off the wall, but I want to talk about the $0 NFA tax now. As of January 1st, the tax on NFA regulated items is now $0. It used to be $200, and that's for I should say not all NFA items, but silencers or suppressors, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and the class of weapons that they call any other weapon. Those are all now $0 to, you don't have to pay tax on them anymore. You still have to fill out a Form 4 for if you're going to purchase one, or Form 1 if you're going to manufacture one for yourself. And you still have to wait for all the paperwork to process, and you have to get approval and that sort of thing. But now it costs $0 instead of $200. So I think this is a step in the right direction to get rid of the NFA completely, because I think the reason they were saying that it was okay and why it's been on the books for so long, which it's been on the books since the 1930s, is because they were like, oh, well, it's a tax, not a registry, and it's not
because they were saying the registry is a registry for the taxes. So it registers who's paid the tax. But if nobody's paying a tax anymore, you're no longer registering who's paid. You're registering the devices themselves. Which one thing that's always been wild to me. So it's $200. Like, that's not a small amount of money. Like, I got my CNR license, which allowed me to get like old guns shipped to my house, and it was like $30. Mm-hmm. Do you know how much it was when they first passed the NFA?
Yeah, it's $200.
It was $200, but that was in the 30s. It was like 100 years ago almost. $200 to register a silencer or a rifle with a short barrel. Like,
well, you know why, right?
Why?
They were fighting organized crime. So the whole reason the National Firearms Act was enacted in the 1930s was you had all these like bootleggers and stuff running these organized crime rings, and they would buy things like a Thompson submachine gun, which you could just order out of a catalog back then, straight to your door, or go pick it up at the Sears and Roebuck probably. And these gangsters were using these shorter, more concealable weapons to commit crimes. And so the lawmakers decided that, well, we can't ban them outright because that would be unconstitutional. So we will make them cost prohibitive to purchase. And so what they did is they took the average cost of like a Thompson submachine gun back then was $200. And so they're like, well, we'll just add a $200 tax on there and effectively double the price of that firearm. What they didn't consider is that, organized criminals had a lot of money, and so they could just buy them anyway. And all that they were doing was taking them away from the people who weren't criminals. But then there's also some other funny stuff in there, like that's where the whole restriction on barrel sizes. So like, short-barreled shotgun and a short-barreled rifle, the restriction for a rifle is 16 inches. Anything less than 16 inches is a short-barreled rifle. But for a shotgun, it's 18 inches. And the reason that it was that is because originally they were writing the law to be 18 inches for both, but there were some lobbyists from some firearms manufacturing places that came, and they're like, hey, we just came out with like all these different 22 long rifles, and they're all 16 inches. That's like kind of become the industry standard. Can you like just, give us a little wiggle room there? And so they put the rifles down to 16 inches, but left the shotguns at 18 inches because most of the time, a shotgun that you're using for bird hunting is, 20 something inches anyway. I think my shotgun is like 28 inches long, the barrel. Mm-hmm. But they basically hard coded that $200 into the law. I don't know if just because they didn't have the forethought of thinking about the economy and inflation, or if they thought that it was a stepping stone to more restrictions and that, oh, well, we'll take care of that in the future or something. But
well, I suppose if it was geared towards organized crime, the charitable read could also be, this is the situation here and now. This isn't always going to be an issue if we can deal with it here and now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, to be fair, like, there isn't organized crime in the same way there was with people gunning people down in the street, like with the mob, like, driving by and shooting up a restaurant or whatever. Yeah. Not that gun crime still doesn't happen, but it's not the same that it was. There weren't, like, massacres with Tommy guns.
Well, okay. No, I would say I would say that's not completely true. Like, because you get gang violence all the time in the United States. It just looks different because I feel like the organized criminals now are not so overtly violent. They might have some violence that happens in the background, like, you know, they might bust your kneecaps because you owe them money or whatever, but they're not going to drive down the street and shoot up a diner or a bar or something. But you get gangsters of the not organized type, unless you consider like Crips and Bloods organized criminals, which in a way they're kind of organized. But when I think of organized, I think like, big illegal business.
Yeah.
But you get these gangbangers that will, like with the Glock switches, you get these gangbangers that will get a hold of Glock switches and they'll go shoot up people's cars or people's houses or people's businesses, and they drive by and, shoot them up and stuff. But it's less about it, but it is different. Like, it's not this big giant organization that is like, oh, you owe us a lot of money, so we're going to come destroy your business because we warned you about this or whatever, It's like, oh, that guy over there belongs to the other gang. Let's go mess him up,
Right. Well, that's part of my point is like, I feel like, and to be fair, I know very little about violence from organized crime in the like 1920s and 30s. But
sure.
From what I've gathered, it was more like intentional and tactical, and like because there were these big organizations, organized crime, that had their interests, and it was kind of like wars over resources and territory and stuff. Like, you're right, that happens today with street gangs and stuff, but it's at a lot smaller scale, I feel like.
Yeah, well, and the motivations are different. Like you said, they're basically competing over resources or whatever, because like
and
those
that
old
does
school...
happen with the street gangs too. Like when they're involved in drugs and that sort of thing, there is like, well, no, this is our territory, you can't come in here and sell here, and that depends on your location as to how prevalent that is and stuff. But
yeah, but I feel as though they also lack class, like organized criminals. And I'm sure that this type of organized criminal still exists, but we just don't see much about them because they're better at hiding now. But
or they're just
like
in Congress. But
well, yeah. but like the Al Capones, they were running a big business, and it was almost like a mini government fighting another mini government, or like a mini country fighting another mini country.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's like I watched
more...
The Godfather for the first time the other day, and like it's that kind of thing. It's these different people with different interests that, fighting wars, then negotiating peaces. Like,
yeah, exactly. And they're like, it's just business, But I feel like it's the gangbangers now. They might make a decent amount of money, slinging drugs or whatever they're doing, but I feel like they lack that. And I don't know, because I'm not in that world. I could be wrong, but it just seems to me that they lack that class, and they lack the sophistication that some of those other, what I think of organized criminals to be. And most of the acts of violence and stuff are not necessarily, they're not as tactical or anything. They're just basically like, oh, you're in my territory, or, oh, I'm upset at you, seems a little more personal, a little more emotional, less strategic and tactical.
And I would imagine that it's more of a, I don't know if it's percentage or how you'd word it, but like, I'm sure there are still those people involved with the street gang stuff that have that kind of business mindset and that sort of thing. But I don't think that's the culture of the street gang the way it was with like the organized crime.
Yeah.
I think partially evidenced by the fact of like Al Capone was super wealthy and lived in a big house and stuff, and most street gangsters don't.
Well, I think there are some exceptions, but yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That's it. Like there are exceptions though, and then that's my point. Like it's still, I mean, crime is still crime. You're more
Mhm,
successful at it if you have that kind of business mindset and that sort of thing.
mhm.
So I'm sure that that's still out there. Um, but maybe it's just less kind of unified.
Maybe. Yeah.
And so because it's more fractured, it's not as successful, which
Yeah.
could be due to cultural shifts or even government and policing breaking up once it gets too big.
Yeah. Um but anyway, bringing it back to the NFA. uh because now the tax is $0, there's been a lot of people that have been registering silly things. Like I saw a thing earlier on Twitter where somebody was talking about registering potatoes as suppressors because, why not? Like, you just stamp a serial number on them and stick them on the end of your gun. And why isn't that a suppressor? If you have the approval from the ATF, then you might as well. And I had mixed feelings on that because I know that they're doing it. These people they're registering silly things like potatoes to make a point. And I agree with that point that, yeah, it's stupid that we have to register this sort of stuff in the first place. However, by submitting a ton of Form 1 potatoes, uh, they are also clogging up the system and making it slower for people that want to actually register um, things like suppressors and SBRs and sbs's. And we need, and this is another thing I'm kind of mixed on too, is on one hand, we need as many people as possible to register short-barreled shotguns and short-barreled rifles and suppressors, as many people as possible, so that nobody can question whether or not those things are in common use.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, like, you're also giving all your information to the government and saying, hey, look, I have this gun.
Yeah.
Or hey, look, I have this thing.
Well, and it depends, I think, on your approach. Like, is it we're going to use the system to try and change the system, which is let's get everybody registered so that we can get it in common use, so that eventually the justification for it goes away, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or let's disrupt the system so it's no longer effective, so they have to abolish it for that reason, which is let's register as many potatoes as we can.
But I think that the latter is less effective because you can always optimize. So, you could optimize it to where it's like, nope, like if you are going to submit a Form 1 to manufacture your own suppressor, you have to submit plans, and the plans have to be reviewed to make sure it is actually a suppressor, and then you'll get approval, or something to that effect. And then like a Form 4, a Form 4 is like already something manufactured, so that's not a problem. But it's basically the Form 1s. So I feel like you can always kind of optimize it. And so by flooding the system with silly garbage, I don't know that will actually achieve a positive result, like what you said. But
I would tend to agree, because I also think that it potentially gives the other side more ammunition to be like, oh, well, we have to put the tax back in because people are disrupting the operations of the ATF by flooding it with this garbage because they don't have to pay anything. Which then when they put it back in, that opens the door for it. Does it go back to 200, or are they going to change it to another number that makes it prohibitively expensive? So like, it really does need to be, it stays at 0 until it goes away. It can't ever go up again. Otherwise, that opens it. It kind of breaks that seal on, hey, we can make it whatever number we want it to be.
yeah, yeah. And ultimately the goal is to just abolish the NFA completely. But and this is just a step toward that. but just as easily as this sort of thing was written into law, where now it's $0, depending on how long it takes to abolish the NFA or whatever, could, push it back the other way. Like if the next election cycle, if we got somebody who was anti-gun, it could be just as easy for them to sign an executive order that puts the tax at $5,000, or whatever, something prohibitively expensive. Again, I mean, $200 is expensive,
Yeah.
but like, okay, especially for a suppressor, a suppressor is a muzzle device. It's a hunk of metal that you attach to the end of your gun. It shouldn't be more than just a few $100 at the most, in my opinion. And I know that there's research and development and all that kind of stuff that goes into it, but tacking $200 on a $400 suppressor now makes it $600, which is quite a lot. But like if you're building an SBR, for example, and you're just like totally kitting it out, that SBR could easily cost you, like $2,000 to build. And then an extra $200 isn't as big of a deal when you're talking about something that expensive.
Right.
But I wonder too, though. So I've seen a lot of people that are now, they're putting in Form 1s so that they can 3D print suppressors. And there's a lot of 3D printed suppressor files out there. There's one in particular that seems really cool. It's called the FTN or the NFA. And it's like they use like a normal muzzle device, like a thread adapter or like a flash can or something. And then you print the core of the suppressor, and then you epoxy that muzzle device in the suppressor. And then I think they like wrap the outside of the suppressor with fiberglass or something to help keep it secure. But they're considering it like a lot of these suppressors, the cores are plastic. So eventually they're going to melt and break down, unlike a stainless steel or titanium suppressor that is going to last 50,000 rounds or whatever. These plastic ones, they'll last maybe 1,000 if you print them with the right material and do it the right way and all that kind of stuff. At least that's what I've been reading. But I'm wondering, so you have to serialize these suppressors once you get your Form 1 approval. If you stamp the serial number on that muzzle device, like on the FTN suppressor, and let's say you shoot out that suppressor and it, fails after however many rounds, could you then 3D print another suppressor but use that same muzzle device in that new printed suppressor? Would that be considered a repair? Because I would assume that like if you have a traditional style suppressor with baffles in it, and you have a failure where a bullet strikes a baffle, I would assume that you could take that baffle out and replace it with a new one, and you wouldn't be violating any laws because you would just be repairing it. So I wonder with the 3D printed one, it's kind of this weird thing where if you're printing the majority of the suppressor, you're kind of sort of manufacturing a new one. But if the part that has the serial number on it is being reused, is that technically a repair to where you don't have to submit another Form 1? Because with these Form 1s, even though that they're $0 now, with how many people are submitting them and the system I could see the system getting like overburdened to where it takes you like a year to get approval. And so let's say you 3D print this suppressor, you shoot the crap out of it, and it's broken in a week or whatever. And you're like, oh, well, now I have to wait another year to get approval again to, print my next prototype to test it out or whatever, to try to improve on the design or whatever. But yeah, I wonder about that.
Well, that's like was it the Ship of Theseus problem? You heard of that?
Yeah, where the ship gets damaged and eventually you replace every single piece of the ship. Is it the same ship or not?
Yeah. So it's like if you, at what point So if you have a SBR, they have registered. I know that the serial number's on the receiver, but like if you then replace every single part of it, is it still the same rifle? So like if you have to replace the barrel, well, that was the thing that made it an SBR. Does that mean you're making a new SBR? Like everything else is the same? Or what if you replace everything on it except for the barrel and the receiver? Is it the same rifle or is it a different one?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
Or what would happen if you took an SBR, replaced the barrel with a longer barrel, and then replaced it back with a shorter barrel? You had the tax stamp for that serialized rifle, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So could you at will un-SBR it and then re-SBR it?
That is a good question. Well, okay, so I think that it wouldn't really matter because if you un-SBR an SBR, so like let's say you had an AR-15 lower that was registered as an SBR and you had a short a short upper on it, you know, that was whatever, 10.5 inches. And then you decided, you know what? I kind of want an 18-inch barrel. And so you put this long 18-inch barrel on top, and now it's no longer an SBR. The thing is like if somebody questioned you, nobody's going to question you about the 18-inch barrel. Nobody's going to be like, is that registered? You know? But they might question you if you have the short barrel on there. So I think it's one of those problems where if you un-SBR'd the SBR, it like it wouldn't matter because nobody would ever ask you. But and then again with like let's say you had the SBR, let's say you had the same one, the AR-15, you had the lower registered as an SBR, and you changed every single little piece about it. You changed the entire upper, you changed the components inside the lower receiver, you changed the buffer and the buffer tube and the style of stock and the style of grip and all that kind of stuff. Again, I don't think it would really matter because as long as that serialized part is still part of the firearm, and you haven't replaced the lower receiver itself, if anybody questions you about it and they look it up, they'd be like, oh, it's a short-barreled AR-15. Is that what this is? Yes. Okay. It doesn't really matter. But with the suppressor, it's like, it's one of those things too where, like if you, like I said, you serialize that muzzle device, and let's say you print design 1, you print the FTN 1, right? And you shoot through that. If you printed another one identical to that and put it all together and nobody knew that you shut out the other one, you probably wouldn't get questioned on it. But then I don't know what the Form 1 looks like, how detailed you have to be. But then like, let's say you, the new version, the version 2 of the F10 came out and you print the FTN version 2 with the same muzzle device, it's technically like a completely different suppressor. But
well, it's the same thing like, you know, the ATF, you have to serialize the receiver on a rifle, even if it becomes a completely different rifle, except for the receiver. So like if you have one part that, I mean, you can't use the suppressor unless it can attach to the muzzle, right? So yeah. The receiver was argued like it's the part of the gun that it would not be possible to fire without, right?
Well,
that was the rationale why that was the piece that they serialized.
Well, no. The rationale for serializing the muzzle device, I just so happen to have one right here, my old bird cage, would be so that, like, instead of putting it on the side of the suppressor, of the 3D printed suppressor, if you put it on the muzzle device, you reuse the muzzle device.
What wasn't the rationale for requiring receivers to be serialized? It was because it was the necessary part of the gun. A gun could not fire without a receiver.
Yeah, I think something like that. Like it is the part that actually fires the bullet, which is a weird thing on AR-15s. It's the way that the law is written. So like the receiver on a bolt action rifle is the part that the bolt goes into. But then like on an AR-15, the part where the bolt goes into is not the serialized part, you know, it's where the trigger control group is. But then like you look at like an MP5, the trigger control group is not the serialized part. It's the receiver where the bolt goes into. So there's something, and I don't know, it's something how the law is written, why the AR-15 is like that particularly. But yeah.
I think my point is like, if you were to have a part of the suppressor that it could not be used without it, wouldn't that be the part that attaches to the muzzle? Like, it might not be an effective suppressor, but a gun that's just a receiver isn't an effective gun.
Okay, but then you could make the argument, let's say you 3D printed a suppressor. Let's say you 3D printed that one I was talking about where you have to have the muzzle device, right? Glued in there. Let's say you printed that suppressor. You didn't glue a muzzle device in it. You think the ATF would consider that a suppressor? Like, almost definitely.
I mean, how would you use it?
You duct tape it to the end of your gun. I don't know. They probably don't care. Yeah. So maybe like the muzzle device is the correct, most effective way to attach the suppressor to your gun, but you could just as easily super glue it on there, you know. The ATF probably just doesn't care. It's like, oh, if it quacks, it's a duck type of thing.
Well, so I think the other thing, going back to like switching things around to the SBR, the ATF probably doesn't care that much. It's like you get it serialized. You say, yep, I did this. Again, like you said, I suppose it's possible if you have to be super detailed about the internals of your suppressor and that sort of thing to get it approved. But if you don't have to be super detailed, or depending on how much detail you have to do, you could probably make some adjustments. Because like the other thing too is like, so you have a suppressor, and you send the design, you get it approved, and then you make a modification to it. You're not making a new one. I don't know, maybe you cut flutes in it or something for some reason.
Sure.
Is that then no longer approved?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
We need to have somebody from the ATF on here.
Yeah.
So we can make fun of them and then ask them these questions.
Yeah. Why are you gay? That's what I would ask. So then, with this, are you planning on submitting any forms to the ATF to get any fancy stuff?
Not in the immediate future, but in the relatively near future. I'm very hopeful that I will have enough land that I can, just shoot whenever I want within reason. So, I'm intending to expand my arsenal and what have you.
Yeah. See, I'm tempted to submit a Form 1 for a suppressor, but that's why I'm wondering about the 3D printed one, because that's kind of what I want to experiment with is the 3D, because I have a 3D printer. I made this cool thing. I call this the Space Cowboy. I got the big giant red dot on there. There's nobody behind my camera, I promise. And this
it's got a flashback to all those stupid videos I saw of teenagers empty. Shooting their phone with their camera.
Have you seen some of the ones where people shoot themselves in the crotch?
Oh yeah, because they're being stupid, like ha ha, look how brave I am, ha ha ha.
Yeah. Don't do that. Don't point guns at things you're not willing to destroy.
And don't be willing to destroy your crotch.
Yeah, definitely. Well, not just destroy your crotch, you're destroying your lineage. I mean, unless you're some, really old man that isn't going to have any more kids or something. But but that's why I'm wondering, because honestly, I don't want to go through all the rigmarole and the effort if, to have to wait months and months to get approval. And then all of a sudden I get approved and I'm like, yeah. And then I print this suppressor and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And then, 10 shots and it's destroyed. And then I'm like, oh, that was a waste of a year of waiting, you know? Like, it wouldn't cost me hardly anything. It would cost me whatever muzzle device I needed in, like, I don't know, $3 worth of filament. But just the waiting for the approval would be a pain. But if you could shoot it out and reprint it and use that same muzzle device, and that was still within the rules.
Do you know if it's legal to repair the baffles on a suppressor?
I don't know for sure, but I would assume so. Like, that would be, I don't know. Cause like I have buddies that have, suppressors, and I don't know. I only have one that I know that has had a baffle strike. Actually, I'll text him and I'll ask him if you're allowed to, repair baffles. Cause I know that he had a baffle strike a year or so ago cause he sent me pictures. I would assume so because that would just be absolutely ridiculous if you wreck a baffle and then, oh, well, sorry, even though it can be repaired, you can't legally repair it, you know?
I would say if you want to be on the safe side, I would say it seems to me that printing a new one, so long as you have one piece that is serialized that always stays the same, would be the same as like a baffle repair. Like that's how you repair it, is by printing again. Where it might get tricky, though, is if you experiment with different designs.
Right.
Say different design, you could more easily argue that's not the same suppressor.
Sure. So then, okay, but then here's the other question too, is like, okay, let's say you shot through the first design and you printed it in black filament, and then you shot through it and it broke, so you're going to print another one. You print the exact same design, but in white filament. Is that...
I don't know how detailed the ATF goes and all that.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things. I don't want to get caught out, you know? I don't want to be like, well, I mean, I don't want to go to jail for 10 years because I, shot through my first suppressor and then printed a new core for it.
If anybody's watching that works for the ATF and has answers to these questions, or happens to have had the same question asked them at the ATF, let us know, because we don't want Brad to go to prison.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I haven't submitted any paperwork or anything yet, so. But, and then the other thing too is I'm also a little hesitant because I don't really want to be on some sort of registry.
Yeah,
but
and that's absolutely fair.
But like I said before, it's like, but we have to submit as many legitimate forms as we can to make it to where it's like, no, this is common use. No, this is something that everybody should be able to own. Yeah.
Can entities submit forms? Does that be individuals?
I think entities can.
Could you create a company to submit it on your behalf?
I know you can create a trust because that's how some people, because that's the other thing about NFA items is like, let's say I had an SBR, or let's just say I had a suppressor, right? And you were like, oh man, suppressors, that's cool. I've always wanted to try one of those. I can't just say, oh yeah, here, you can borrow it and you can take it out to the range next time you go and then, bring it back when you're done. Can't do that. Now, we could like go out to the range together and you could put it on your gun and try it out while I'm there. I know that that's a thing, but you can't just be like, oh yeah, you can borrow this. Like I could hand you my 22 rifle and just be like, oh yeah, you can borrow this. You can go take it out and have fun with it and bring it back when you're done. Can't do that with an NFA item. Like if it was an SBR 22, I couldn't just lend it to you.
Because then I would be in possession of a NFA item that's not registered to me, right?
Right. But the way people get around that is they create a trust and they put whoever they want to be able to have access to that in the trust. So we could create a trust that was Nelson Brothers Trust, and then you would put the suppressor in the trust instead of under my name or under your name, and then either one of us could use it because we're both members of the trust and it belongs to the trust.
But then if it's about privacy, then that's just an extra list. You're still on the list.
Right. You're still on a list. It's just it's one of those little silly workarounds to be able to, yeah. I think that's also how, like machine guns, I'm pretty sure people put machine guns, like pre-86 machine guns in trusts so that multiple people can use them without getting hassled. Yeah, I think that's a similar kind of thing. And then there's also the people that can manufacture new machine guns, the whatever FFL with the special occupation tax. They're allowed to manufacture NFA items, which includes machine guns. But then those, those items aren't allowed to be sold except to people who are allowed to buy it. So like if you manufactured a new machine gun, you wouldn't be able to sell it to Joe Blow off the street. But you'd be able to sell it to like law enforcement and militaries and that sort of thing.
Or a different FFL.
Or a different FFL that had the same
special occupation.
SOT. Yeah. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Brandon Herrera talking about the ins and outs of legally owning automatic weapons, and it was chaotic.
Yeah. Well, the way I understand it with the pre-ban stuff is that
pre-ban stuff anybody can own. It's just prohibitively expensive because there's not a lot of them.
Right. Like there was one, Ian and I went to a gun store in North Idaho earlier this year, and the guy had a full auto MP5. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. And it was I think it was a 2-stamp gun, or maybe it was considered a 3-stamp gun because it was an SBR full auto and it had integrated suppressors. So it was like the MP5 SD or whatever. It was really cool. But that's the thing is you have to get, you have to do all the paperwork and stuff to get it transferred. And I was like, how much are you asking for it? And he said, oh, I'll be able to sell it for like $45,000. It's like, holy cow. And I think there are some like M16s and AK-47s aren't that expensive, but they're still like $15,000, which I don't know, full auto sounds fun, but not $15,000 fun. Like I'll stick with my cheap guns that shoot slower.
So if anybody watching wants to see us shoot a fully automatic rifle, like and subscribe so we can get that sweet YouTube money.
Yeah. Like and subscribe and maybe send us like $15,000. But the pre-ban stuff, I think really the only hurdle besides the crazy price is just doing the paperwork like any other NFA item.
Yeah.
But that the problem is the price and being able to source one, because they're a little bit hard to find. And probably the people that have them are holding on to them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't sell it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. Like if we got, passed down some sort of spoils of war type thing, some submachine gun from World War II from our great granddad or something, I wouldn't be selling that thing. I'd be passing it down.
Yeah.
Unless they made it illegal to pass it down, then it would, just end up lost in a boating accident. Although I feel like you probably get in big trouble.
Try and do that.
Yeah, I feel like you probably get in big trouble for doing that with an NFA item, though.
Because it's registered. They know you have it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, one of those things where you fill out your 4473 or whatever to do your background check to buy a gun. But like here in Montana, I could go down to the store and do my background check, buy a gun, and then, use it for however long or whatever, and then go sell it to a buddy for cash without doing any paperwork. And that's completely legal here.
Yeah.
And so if, law enforcement came asking, it'd be like, oh yeah, well, I sold that 2 months ago. I don't have it anymore. And they'd just be like, oh, okay. Because that's just normal here. And it's completely legal. But with an NFA item, without doing a Form 4 for the person you're trying to sell it to, you can't do that. So,
Or like if you have a CNR license, you don't have to do any background checks or anything to get it. They just send it to you. Now, you have to keep records, and the ATF can come and inspect your collection. But from my understanding, if you let that license lapse, like I did, you're not CNR anymore. They can't come and inspect your stuff anymore. I also think
right.
that it's specifically anything that you bought with the CNR they can inspect. They don't have a right to inspect all of your guns, just what you bought with the CNR.
Sure. Now, what you were saying something recently where the original AR-15s were getting there to where you could.
Yeah, because it was something, if I remember right, there's a list of guns that have been deemed either weird or of historic note that are put on the CNR list. And then automatically, I think it's every weapon manufactured more than 50 years ago is a CNR
Oh,
rifle or CNR weapon.
oh, well, then AR-15 definitely qualifies. At least
Yeah.
one of the original ones, that is.
Yeah, and any of the remakes don't, or any of the newer
Right.
ones don't, but the original ones would count.
So then some of the weird ones, like you know what a calico is?
Sounds familiar, but
Do you remember there were some in do you remember Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
vaguely.
There were some in that movie. They're like this, it's a 9mm pistol, and they're kind of big and chunky, and they have this giant like barrel on top, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
magazine. And they were really weird. I think they were made in the 80s. Do you think that that's under the CNR list since it's so weird?
I don't know. The list is public. We can look through and see what's on there.
Oh,
But because I think people have to specifically submit for something to be added to the list.
oh,
So
I
somebody
see.
would have had to have looked at that and be like, hey, this is funky enough to be added to the list. And then the ATF would have had to say yes.
Hmm. So can you get it from like private sellers too? Like I have some guns that are pretty old, definitely over 50 years old. If it's like my 3030, for example, that one's probably 60 or 70 years old. Could I just put that in a box and ship it to you?
I mean,
If you
I
still
believe
had
you.
the CNR, that is.
I don't think. Why would you need to? Is it because across state lines? Like, why would you need any kind of licensure for you to give me a gun, anyways?
Well, no, I don't think you're allowed to ship firearms except through an FFL.
If that's the case, then I think the shipper would probably have to have the FFL.
Well,
I don't know.
I don't think so, because I think like guns get shipped FedEx and UPS all the time.
But
I
from
don't know.
private
That's
individuals
interesting.
to FFLs?
I
Because,
don't know.
you're right.
That's my question. It's like if I went to, because I could easily go down to the sporting goods store and say like, hey, I need you to ship this to this other person
Yeah.
or this other FFL, which a CNR is a type of FFL.
Yeah.
But I just wondered if me without an FFL, if I could just put it in a box and ship it straight to you.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Could you put it in a box and ship it to a gun store?
I don't know.
Because I think that's the question. Like, 'cause, in terms of like shipping and stuff, it acts like a FFL.
Yeah, I know you can with black powder firearms because they're not
But they're not
considered
firearms, right?
firearms. Yeah. So you can even buy, you just have to be, as far as I know, you just have to be 18 to buy one. You don't have to do any sort of background check or anything. And yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not looking. It's not now. I'm curious. I remember when I was reading the stuff, it was saying that it gives the ability to like engage in interstate transactions and whatnot for those firearms. So maybe.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. Um, yeah. Well, not to, not to change subject or anything, but just real quickly, since we're coming up on time, what do you think about the whole letters of marque thing? There's a bill being proposed that would modify an old law that gave the president powers to issue letters of marque to recruit privateers to fight pirates, basically. But the bill is to extend that law to cartels. So basically, you could get a letter of marque. Excuse me. To seize cartel assets and basically hunt down cartel members outside the United States specifically. You think that's a good idea or no?
So I don't think it's a good idea. I'm trying to decide if I think it's inherently unethical or not.
So
the reason I say I don't think it's a good idea is because I think that I don't know that it would do a whole lot.
Well, back in the day, privateers did a lot.
Yeah, but then privateers also would not infrequently go pirate.
I mean, that's true. That's true. But so I think that it's not a bad idea. And one of the reasons is because I don't think just anybody can get a letter of marque. It has to be approved by the president. So I think if it were to go through, you'd have to have a pretty good reason. Like, so what I think it would look like nowadays would be, let's say you
like
owned
private security companies and stuff,
or private security companies, or maybe let's say that you owned a shipping company down in Florida that operated in the Gulf of Mexico, and you had problems with cartel members coming and like raiding your ships or, shooting at you or whatever. The letter of marque would give you the backing of the United States to shoot back and to like basically seize their boats and stuff.
Well, I don't think that is there an issue with not being able to defend yourself on the high seas? I thought that you could defend yourself, whereas the letter of marque would allow you to go after them.
Well, I think the letter of marque allows you to go after them, but also I think it's one of those things where, like, let's say pirates, are coming after you and you, or let's say they're not even necessarily coming after you, but you see them going after a buddy or whatever, and you blow them out of the water. You light them up with whatever guns you got, and you kill them all, and you take their boat as your own. Let's say that they were from Mexico. The Mexican government might be like, hey, this U.S. citizen or these U.S. citizens, killed a bunch of Mexican citizens. The U.S. needs to extradite those people to Mexico so they can be prosecuted. With the letter of marque, I think it's basically the U.S. government saying, yes, we're okaying this behavior for you, and we will back you up in case you catch any flack. So if same kind of situation, Mexico says, hey, you need to extradite these people because they killed Mexican citizens. The U.S. government says, no, because they have approval from us to fight back against the cartels because the cartels are a problem. I think it's more of a protection rather than a permission, maybe.
I suppose if that's how it was implemented, and then I could see it being useful. Though, if I would hope that the U.S. would back up a U.S. citizen if they killed somebody in the defense of themselves or somebody else, regardless of the letter of marque.
Well, but I mean, even if it's like, oh, that's a cartel boat, and they haven't aggressed you, and you open fire on them first, and you're the aggressor, I think that you would be covered with the letter of marque, but not necessarily without.
Well, so that's true, but that's I don't know. I if it was done very like specific, like you said, you had to have a good reason, or like you had to have the resource connections to make it reasonable, then I could see that. But if it's anybody that just wants to become a privateer, I can see that going badly, of them going out and just shooting people up because they think they're in a cartel and stealing all their stuff.
Yeah, but then I wonder too, like if they just went out and shot up some merchant ship and it wasn't cartel, and they killed a bunch of innocent people that weren't armed and stole their ship, I think that would probably violate the terms of their letter of marque. I would hope it would.
It would depend on how it's implemented.
Yeah.
I don't think it can just be, hey, here's your ticket to go out and just kill whoever you think is in the cartels.
Yeah, and I don't think it is that. I could be wrong, but yeah,
because I know that, like, I don't know, in historical letters of marque, it wasn't even just against pirates, but like you get letter of marque, so you could be a British privateer and go sink a bunch of French ships.
Yeah,
they're like, oh yeah, but now just wanting, hey, there's a French merchant, I'm going to steal all their stuff. Like, that was not okay.
True. That is true. But the privateers
so like, there's
also did a lot of good
like,
things too.
But well, so then the question too is, like, with the cartels, let's say there's a cartel ship, the boat is owned by the cartels, the people on the boat are for the cartels. They don't have any drugs, they don't have any like drug cash, they're just like, I don't know, going from point A to point B, and then you kill them all. Is that reasonable?
I would say yes. And here's why. Because if they are confirmed cartel members and they're operating a cartel boat, I mean, it's kind of like basically declaring war on the cartel. And in war, I mean, your goal is to eliminate the enemy. So,
but you can't kill non-combatants in a war.
Well, you should tell that to Obama. I mean, there's been.
Do you think you should be able to kill non-combatants in a war?
No, not necessarily. So, but it depends on what you consider a non-combatant. So, like, let's say Osama bin Laden, for example. You know, he's the leader of Al Qaeda, and he himself has never fired a shot at anybody. And let's say some troops roll up on him, and he's just outside playing basketball with some buddies, and none of them have guns. Do you think that it would be right to just let him be?
I don't think it would be wrong to just let him be. But I think that's also a difference too of you're talking about leadership in an organization. What if it's just like a grunt and they're just a guy and they work for the cartel and like they've done bad things, but they're just playing basketball? Can you just shoot them?
No, but maybe you try to apprehend them.
Okay. Does the letter of marque require that you try to take them alive if possible?
I don't know. Now, okay, let me float you a different situation. Let's say you've got cartel members and they're all in a courtyard playing basketball, and there's cartel grunts there, there's high-level dudes there. You know, it's just a mix. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, none of them are armed. They're just playing basketball, hanging out, having a good time. And you know where they are in this compound, but you are unable to reach the compound because of whatever roadblocks or whatever stuff that they have set up along the road to the compound. Would it be right to bomb the compound and eliminate those cartel members, even though they are not actively aggressing you?
I think only if you can if we're treating this as if it's like a war situation, which I don't know that I'm entirely on board with that with the cartels, but that's a whole other conversation. If we're treating it like a war situation, I think if you can confirm that there are no innocents in the compound, then that's a reasonable target, because I would consider that like a military target.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't, though, then no. So, like,
even if none of them are aggressors.
I mean, they're not
Let's
actively
say
aggressing, but that'd be the same
right.
as like there's a military base sitting somewhere. They're not actively aggressing anybody, but they get bombed. Like, that's a legitimate military target.
Okay, so then if there's a boat of cartel members and they're just hanging out on the boat having a good time.
But you said that then the one there was like grunts and higher ups. I think the higher ups are more reasonable to take out than the grunts.
Okay,
if it was just grunts, then I would say unless it is if you're targeting the people and it's just grunts in the compound, then I would say that's unreasonable. If you're targeting the compound because it has strategic purpose, then I would say that's reasonable.
Yeah, but what if this is like 10% of all the cartel grunts and you could just wipe them all out?
Well, we could wipe out the entire cartel if we just nuke all of Mexico.
Well, no. But I'm saying, like, in this compound, it's confirmed that there are no civilians, there are no innocent people. I mean, you could argue that maybe some of the cartel members, some of the cartel grunts haven't done anything wrong yet because they're real green or something, but they still joined up with the cartel. Like, would it be right strategically to wipe out a tenth of their fighting force, even though they're not actively aggressing you?
I don't think strategic has anything to do with right or wrong.
Okay, is it right or wrong then?
I would. So, do you think that it would be wrong for the cartels to bomb a group of U.S. soldiers while they're at a concert and there's somebody there that the entertainer doesn't die, but they're there on R&R, they're relaxing, and then they are specifically targeted?
Yes, but only because I think that the cartels are bad people.
But now you're not treating it like war anymore.
Well, now if we're treating it, if it's like two completely, if I'm completely neutral to the two groups and they're fighting, and they wipe out a large portion of the fighting force by taking them out while they're at a concert, I don't know. I think that is a little. I feel like that's a little against the rules of war, so to speak. But
so if you're treating, you said it's like we're. It would be a strategically effective play. Yeah. I don't know that I would call it a good play per se.
Okay. Sure. Strategically effective. But
because it's like you say you don't think that's reasonable to happen to U.S. soldiers, but you're likening what we're doing with the cartels as a war, which implies two armies fighting each other.
Yes. However, so like, for example, the war in Iraq or the Vietnam War, you know, the United States soldiers in the United States, they have kind of an ethical code when it comes to war, but in those conflicts, the other side did not. So like in the Iraq War, they were sending kids out with bombs to blow up soldiers and stuff. It's like, that's something we would never do. Or like same in the Vietnam War, is they would strap themselves up in trees and snipe as many soldiers as they could until the sniper was finally found and shot dead. Or they'd be in rice paddies surrounded by civilians and, you know, shoot back. And that's something that we would never do, is hide in a bunch of civilians. How do you fight that but still keep your morals? And I would assume the cartels are very similar to that they fight dirty.
Well, you're assuming.
I am assuming. But okay. So
'Cause
let's go to like
Because when has the cartel attacked the U.S. military in a dirty way?
I don't know. but
Because I
they
do
are
think it gives you, I do think that sort of thing gives you some leeway, but not
Mhm.
much. Like, I still think that
Sure.
it's incumbent on you to be moral. So, like, just because the enemy is strapping bombs to kids doesn't mean you can also strap bombs to kids.
Right. It also means that you can't just walk into a square and kill all the kids.
Right.
Right. I would agree with that. But my point is like there has to be a little bit. Let's say the cartel does bomb a bunch of U.S. soldiers while they're at a concert. Would that then give the U.S. grounds to wipe them out while they're hanging out playing basketball?
Potentially. I still don't know. I still would not call it an ethical move, but I think they would have grounds to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then, I mean, this kind of comes down to all the way down to like nuclear deterrence too. I mean, not with the cartels. Hopefully, cartels don't have nukes, but where it's basically like, oh well, if you press your button, we're gonna press ours, so don't press your button. But it's like if anybody presses the button, we all die.
Well, that's part of how warfare kind of developed into the rules where they had. Like, people are like, oh, I really don't like that when you did that to me. And they're like, oh yeah, we didn't really like when you did it to us. We should just stop doing that. Okay. And so then people generally don't use gas, and people are limited as to the type of rounds and that sort of thing they use, because there's this kind of I don't know, code of the warrior of this is almost like a game. It's not a game, but like it's it's ideally it should be like a duel of armies sort of thing.
Right. Ideally. But again, there are those situations where it's not. Where it's mostly been when there's been like guerrilla fighters facing facing an actual army. And I would say that the cartels are probably more similar to guerrilla fighters than an actual army.
Yeah, but I think one of the big differences though is like, from my understanding, like they are doing a lot of harm, and I know then they do kill people.
Yeah,
but they're not organized or taking their goal isn't fighting.
Yeah. Their goal is
to make money.
Yeah, their goal is to make a ton of money at the expense of innocent lives. So, I mean,
so they belong in Congress.
That's the thing too. What?
So they belong in Congress.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But that's kind of the other thing you got to consider too with the cartels is like, okay, yeah, so they're not out there, trying to shoot people up. Well, I mean, they are, but I mean, like,
from my understanding, like the shooting people, it's like the organized crime and stuff. Like, they shoot people, but it's for business, generally speaking.
So the cartels, that would be a good example of like organized crime, like what I was thinking about before. Yeah. But again, they are taking advantage of weak people and destroying their lives and ending their lives through the product that they sell. Their primary motivation is money, and to make a whole butt ton of money, and probably control and power over their local governments and stuff too, I would assume. But they're doing a lot of harm to innocent people. And so it's almost a similar thing as if they were just going around shooting innocent people.
So then it's okay for us to just shoot anybody that sells drugs?
No, and I didn't say that.
But but you said that your justification for treating them like guerrilla fighters was because they were engaged in business that was exploiting and doing harm to innocent people because they're selling drugs to them.
Yeah, but shooting a drug dealer and destroying the organization who is distributing the drugs is two different things.
No, if you shoot all the drug dealers, they can't be distributed anymore.
Well, they'll just find more drug dealers.
Yeah, just keep shooting them.
Yeah,
If you kill the grunts on the boat, you're not destroying the organization. You're just killing those grunts. They'll get more grunts.
that's fair. That's fair. They would get more grunts, but you'd get a boat, maybe a couple AKs.
Not if you blew up the boat.
Well, that's true. Huh. Well, I think it's one of those hard things where there is no right answer necessarily, because it's like, it's a very sticky moral thing, just in general.
Well, and especially when it's the organization is outside of our country. Like our police forces can't really go in and stop them. And from my understanding, they have enough control over their governments and stuff to obviously not be held accountable by their local governments either. So I agree, it is sticky.
Well,
I don't know that the answer is going weapons hot, though.
Well, so there is, I am pretty sure that the letter of Marque doesn't just allow you to, like, I don't know what all the rules are with all that. There might be more specific rules that I'm not aware of, but I think it's either capturing or killing. So I don't know if maybe there is like an escalation of force you have to follow, where it's like you have to apprehend them rather than shoot them unless they shoot at you first, or if they brandish
more
weapons.
Of a deputization in that you can act as almost like a law enforcement officer with these people to stop them from engaging in their criminal activity, then I'm more open to that idea, so long as not given to any Joe Blow that wants it.
Well, and I don't think that that's the case. Yeah. I think that I would assume that the president would be very particular about who it's given to. Like, just like if I submitted for one, I would hope that I'd get denied, because like I'm not even on any sort of, I don't even live in a coastal state. Like, although I think it is written. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think it's written just outside the United States. So I think I could just, drive over the border to Canada and fight the cartel on land. But that's the other thing. Okay. So let's say that you are able to stop this boat, and you apprehend all the members, and you take them back to the United States to be put in jail. Should you be able to keep the stuff? Like, should you be able to keep their boat and whatever was on the boat? Is that ethically right or wrong?
I would say, for fairness' sake, everything that's legal for you to own as a U.S. citizen.
Well, sure. I'm assuming,
keep the
like,
cocaine.
right. I'm assuming you would, like, if you found cocaine on the boat, you would,
but it's like,
take it to the government.
Police departments keep seized goods that aren't returned, and then they auction them off and keep that money. So if you're acting as the law enforcement official, then why can't you keep that stuff?
And as far as I know, that's kind of the incentive for the letter of Marque, is like, that's why you would sign up for one, is not just to, defend whatever business you have that is dealing with the cartels, but also to profit off of seized things.
If you get to seize their drug money, then you get to seize their drug money. I don't think you should keep their drugs, because that's the whole point, is that we're trying to stop the drugs.
Yeah. Okay. You know what would be interesting, and I wonder how this would work, is, let's say you pulled this boat over and you kept everything there except for the drugs. You gave the drugs to law enforcement in Florida and they destroyed it or whatever. But let's say you found $1 million in cash on the boat. Like, how would you report that on your taxes? It would just be income.
Yeah.
Like,
you're a private contractor.
Private contractor for the U.S. government, and you got paid $1 million in cash.
It was a performance bonus.
Yeah, it was a tip. The cartel
Hey,
tipped
then
you.
it's not taxed if it's a tip.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Exactly. Yeah, because I was thinking like but it's dirty money. Does it become clean once you seize it, or is it
I
still
mean,
dirty?
what does the government do when they seize money? They
I have no
keep it.
clue.
I mean,
Well,
what else are they gonna do with it? They keep it. It just
sure.
it probably funds like the DEA or Border Patrol, whichever organization seizes it. They probably just hang on to it, and it goes into their coffers. They like have some process. Legally, there is due process with property. So if property was supposedly used for illegal means, there is due process, but the
For
onus
U.S.
is on
citizens.
true.
So like the cartel members, if you caught them out in international waters or whatever, and you brought them to the United States to go to jail, I don't think that they would get that process, because then you would have to forfeit whatever seized goods, or potentially forfeit whatever seized goods you got from them, and then what would be the point?
Well, no, but the due process. So, it's flipped for property. The onus is on the property owner to prove that it was not used in a crime. Property is guilty until proven innocent.
Okay.
But also, if they had a bunch of stuff, like if they had $1 million and they could prove that it wasn't from criminal activity, should you keep that $1 million?
Yes. If you got $1 million in cash off of a boat that you seized, it'd be really tempting not to report it, because, taxes on $1 million. Well, I guess it depends on what kind of business you run and stuff. You could probably make it to where your taxes are less, depending on how you spent the money in your business and stuff. But like if it's just $1 million cash dropped in your lap, you'd have to pay 30 or 40% tax on it. So you'd only be able to keep like 600,000 or 700,000, which is still a lot of money. But it's also one of those things where you couldn't just hold on to it and not tell anybody, and then just like buy stuff with it, because then they'll find out. That's why criminals launder their money, so that and pay taxes
here's what
on
you
it.
do. You just buy a whole bunch of gold with it, and say that's a business expense. So
yeah. Yeah. I wonder if that would work. I don't know if that would work.
That can't work. That otherwise people would be doing that all over the place.
I mean, maybe people do, and we just aren't aware of it.
I suppose that's fair.
Maybe it's like, oh no, we're investing in the business by investing in gold. Maybe. I don't know. Or it's like, oh, we're investing in the business by buying a Lamborghini because it's a work vehicle.
Speaking of crooked corporate stuff, before we wrap up, I have a coworker that told me about. So apparently, every big bank has a full-time professional art assessor on staff, and there's a handful of artists in it's like Sonora, California, that produce art for banks to buy. And banks will buy the art for like $2 million or whatever. And they'll put it up in their bank. Their bank now has $2 million asset that they can borrow against. So all of these arts and statues of these banks are actually there to allow them to borrow more money against their assets, because their art assessor said it was worth $2 million. It was just this guy in California that makes all the art for all the banks, produced it for them.
Well, no, and I've heard of similar things, and I don't know, maybe this would be considered fraud, but I've heard of people, very wealthy people, they will commission an artist to like make a painting, and they'll buy the painting for $50,000, and then they will take it to an art assessor, and the art assessor will appraise it at $1 million. And then, they hold on to the art as an asset, but they basically paid $50,000 to make $950,000.
Yeah.
And I don't know how true that is, or I could be exaggerating the numbers. It might be like they paid $50,000 and it gets assessed at $60,000,
But that's still making profit off of nothing.
Right. Well, but art is one of the most stable things you can invest in, from what I hear.
I wonder how much of that, though, is because that's what everybody with money uses to secure their debt.
It most definitely is that, because if your money is tied up in assets, it's not taxed. And a lot of people that have a lot of expensive assets can loan against those assets, and debt is not taxable. So, it's really easy to, people will say, like, Jeff Bezos, his salary is only like $85,000 a year or something, but he's one of the richest people in the world because he owns companies that are worth billions of dollars, and he has assets that are worth millions or billions of dollars. And basically, if he wanted to buy a new $10 million house, he doesn't have to have $10 million in cash. He can get a loan, probably just against like the shares of Amazon that he has. He could just get a loan against his stock options and use that to buy the house.
Because money isn't real.
Yeah, it's just numbers.
Well, and I also heard apparently Starbucks is more of a bank than it is a coffee shop now.
Really?
Because
In what way?
everybody loads money onto their Starbucks app, and they pay with their Starbucks app. So Starbucks has all this money coming into these accounts that they can treat it like a bank. So when you pay through the app, you're sending them some of your money, and then they're paying for it with it. But it's kind of like how McDonald's made all of its money being a real estate company, not a restaurant.
Yeah, I think that's crazy. They own all the land and the buildings, even though they're still franchises. Yeah, I mean, it's genius, but yeah, that is interesting. Well, I wonder, you get into how banks work and stuff, and it's kind of like this. It's kind of like a big Ponzi scheme where, you deposit $10,000 in the bank, and if I want to go take a $10,000 loan out, it's like, well, it's against your money, kind of thing. They use your money to fund my loan, and but then you still have to be able to go and pull your $10,000 out if you want, and yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. I think that's why we have the FDIC. Because there were problems with that back in the Great Depression or something.
Yeah, because there were it's Wonderful Life. There were runs on the bank, and the bank didn't have enough money to give everybody their money because it was in all these investments that then failed.
Yeah.
And so then people lost all of their money. So even with FDIC, like, this is a lot of money, but I think it's only insured $150,000 per account. So if you had...
It's $250,000.
So if you had a whole bunch of money saved up, like your life savings, and you had like $1 million, you wouldn't get $1 million back if the bank failed.
Well, yeah. Well, and that happened with the Silicon Valley Bank or whatever down in California. There were a lot of like tech startups that were in that bank, and a lot of very wealthy people, and they'd have millions of dollars in their account. And then something happened. I don't remember exactly all the details, but the bank failed. And this was just like a handful of years ago. The bank failed, and people lost their shirts because they had millions of dollars in this bank, and they're only insured for $250,000. So if you had $2 million in there, you lost 3/4 of your money. Or no, you lost
more than that.
Yeah, you lost 7/8 of your money. Yeah. Anyway, well, I think we probably better call it. We've been going for over 2 hours, but thank you everybody for watching and listening. if you're this podcast is on YouTube and Spotify, so wherever you're watching or listening, thank you for joining us. Let us know. Join the conversation in the comments on whatever platform you're listening on. What do you guys think about the NFA in general and the 0% tax or $0 tax now? What do you think about doing hard things and the letter of Marque? What do you think about all that? Let us know.
And if you wanted to send us 15 grand, we promised we would buy an automatic weapon with it.
Yes, definitely. If you wanted to send us 15 grand, we'll buy an automatic weapon with it and we'll make a video just for you. You know what? If you send us 15 grand, here's what we're going to do. If you send us 15 grand, we'll buy an automatic weapon in a trust with all of the Minuteman Theory people in the trust, and we'll add you in the trust too, so you can use it. Sound like a deal? All right. Well, thanks for listening and watching, and we'll see you in the next one.